What's happening, Packer fans? Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast here on YouTube. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at AndyHermanNFL. Got another big show lined up for you today. We've got a ton to discuss because, once again, we are really in the middle of the offseason now. Technically, the league year just started, but tons of news and notes that I want to go over. But where else could I possibly start than with Tim Boyle officially signing with the Detroit Lions? And yes, first of all, thank you, Corey Linsley, for not signing with another NFC North team, because it seems like NFC North teams are champing at the bit to get a hold of any former Packer players that they can possibly get their hands on. Of course, Jamal Williams just signed with the Lions. Now Tim Boyle officially with the Lions as well. Geronimo Allison's still there, if you remember correctly, as well. He signed there last year and then opted out. So Geronimo Allison, Tim Boyle, and Jamal Williams will be able to share stories as Detroit Lions this upcoming season. But of course, devastated to see Boyle go to the NFC North, but in a way excited that he's going to have, a real opportunity to show what he's capable of. Nobody blocking his way other than Jared Goff, which we know from watching Jared Goff isn't that much of a roadblock. So this is a really great opportunity for him in that regards. Didn't, get a ton of money. Sounds like it was basically about a $2 million deal with some guaranteed money within that, but again, I like this overall situation. Just, again, wish it maybe would have been an AFC team, but I digress. There have been a few of you that have asked along the way, how did I start standing Tim Boyle and how did I get that association? For those of you who don't know, it's been kind of a running thing where I've been incredibly supportive of Boyle throughout his career in Green Bay. And really where that started, so the season he was brought on as an undrafted free agent, I did a series on Twitter of every undrafted free agent that they brought in, and I posted videos and clips of anything I could find and kind of broke down some of the tape and things they did well and things they didn't do well. And I identified Boyle very quickly as somebody who at the time I thought was a legitimate practice squad candidate. He was the de facto number 4 quarterback that offseason. They had let go of Joe Callahan. And you remember this was the offseason they brought in Deshaun Kaiser. Of course, Aaron Rodgers and Brett Hundley were in camp as well. Hundley had just played, almost the entirety of the previous season with Aaron Rodgers hurt. So he was definitely behind the 8 ball going into camp. But really liked some of the stuff that I saw on tape. And for those of you who are not familiar with Boyle, he was borderline terrible, but basically like one of the worst quarterback stat lines you could ever possibly imagine in college. When he went to UConn, and then he transferred, had a cup of coffee at a lower level, and still didn't play great. But you went and you watched the tape, and the traits were really impressive, especially for an undrafted guy, and even more so for an undrafted guy who had just an abysmal stat line in college. So I came away really impressed and kind of immediately labeled him as somebody that I thought had a real chance of making the practice squad. Again, Rodgers was coming back. They just traded for Deshaun Kaiser, and Hundley played almost the entirety of the previous season. So very unlikely that he was going to be able to work his way as an undrafted guy into the rotation in any way, shape, or form and into a 53-man roster spot. But I certainly thought that there was enough talent there that was intriguing that he could potentially earn a practice squad spot. So then I go to the first open practice of the season, and I'm watching all the new rookies, the new free agents. If memory serves, I believe that was Jimmy Graham and Mercedes Lewis, and some of those players, trying to get an eye on those, all the rookies, etc. But I'm watching practice, and as time goes on, I'm trying to get an eye on just about everyone, and I'm watching this quarterback group. And remember, you have got arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback of all time in Aaron Rodgers. You've got Deshaun Kaiser, who just started almost the entirety of the previous season in Cleveland, was borderline first-round pick, early second-round pick, and the Packers had just made a serious investment from him. Starter at Notre Dame, big-time quarterback. Brett Hundley, who started almost the entirety of the previous season for Green Bay because Rodgers was hurt. And again, UCLA quarterback, somebody that they had felt pretty highly about at that time. And then you've got Tim Boyle, undrafted rookie free agent, and is one of his very first practices, if not his first practice. And what stood out to me was Boyle's demeanor, because I'm not talking talent here. I'm not talking about him throwing the football or anything like that. But if you were a newcomer and had no idea who the starting quarterback of the team was and were just basing it off of body language and demeanor, I would have legitimately thought that Tim Boyle was a starting quarterback. He had the calm and the moxie and all of it from day one. And I was so impressed that he just had that. And funny story, and he had a really live arm as well, which stood out, and I had tweeted about it. And I went on a radio show with John Papadopoulos in Lacrosse later that day, and he was asking me some players that stood out, and I kind of told a snippet of that story I just told you, and he immediately said something of like, wow, this is really major news. You're thinking that Tim Boyle can challenge for a roster spot. That's really incredible. And like, I never got a chance to correct it. And the whole time I'm thinking like, whoa, I did not say that this guy was going to be challenging for a 53-man roster spot. I just thought he was a really intriguing player that had a good demeanor and a live arm, which was more than I kind of was expecting going into that day. Well, a little while goes on, and there was an OTA. I think it was like a week later, not by much. And that OTA had all the veterans sitting out. And so it was just Kaiser and Hundley and Tim Boyle. And zero question about it. Like none. Boyle was on fire that day and completely outplayed both Brett Hundley and Deshaun Kaiser. Kaiser and Hundley could get nothing going on offense all day, which in hindsight probably will not surprise you all that much. But they couldn't get anything going. Tim Boyle drove him right down the field multiple times, was having an absolute day through multiple touchdown passes. The only thing that stopped him was an interception by Raven Green on the very last period where he was going down to like put the cherry on the top of his sundae. Just was crushing it all day, drove him down again into the red zone on the very last series, and then threw a pick to Raven Green. But just killed it that day. So he stood out more, and I praised him again, more on Twitter that day. And so that was the next thing that stood out to me. And then he gets in his very first preseason game, and I'm watching him as he takes his first snap at Lambeau Field. And I promise I'm not going to go too much more into this, but he had the poise and the moxie. Like the very first play, he gets the call right in the huddle. Remember, first time fans, Lambeau Field, a million things going in your mind. Gets up to the line of scrimmage, calls the play in the huddle, gets everyone lined up appropriately, checking the play clock. He actually, I think he makes a check or I don't know if it's an audible, but I think he makes a check on the play, and then goes through his full cadence. I think he even had maybe like a dummy count, goes through a full cadence, and then looks the player off, comes back to his right and throws a seed to the right side. So his very first snap, he's got all of this down on play one. Your first time in Lambeau, I can only imagine the butterflies that are going through. Again, the calm, the moxie, the poise, had all of it. And then really that season makes it onto the 53-man roster. They trade away Brett Hundley. The next season makes it on the 53. They trade away Deshaun Kaiser. The next season makes it on the 53. He makes it over Jordan Love as the backup quarterback. Like he went back to back to back, eliminating Hundley and Kaiser, and then winning the second job over Love in back-to-back seasons, which has been really incredible. And you could see the consistent growth. In camp last year, the distance between Boyle and Love wasn't close. I mean, Boyle won it flat out. So certainly understand the decision that it was time to move on for Green Bay. You've got to get Jordan Love those snaps when you're making that sort of investment into that type of quarterback. But definitely bittersweet to see Tim Boyle go, and of course, even worse to see him go into a division rival. But best of luck to Tim Boyle. Excited to see what he's going to be able to do. Certainly my challenge to him is by the time they get to Green Bay this season is to see a Tim Boyle, Aaron Rodgers matchup at Lambeau Field or Ford Field, whatever happens first. So we'll see if that will ultimately happen. Let's get to some bigger news that happened throughout the day. We also got the details of Aaron Jones' contract. So everyone's hearing 4 years, $48 million, 4 years, $48 million, 4 years, $48 million, $12 million per year. Why would they pay that much and that long for a running back, and so on and so forth? Well, it turns out this is not a 4-year, $48 million deal in practice. This is a 2-year, basically $20 million per year, or $20 million total deal. So about $10 million per year. But how it breaks down is if you look at the third year of the deal, there's almost no way that Green Bay keeps him on that contract. They'd basically be paying him an additional $16 million for one season of play that season. There's just no way they're doing that at that point in time. So it's basically an out after year 2 where they're either going to have to restructure him or release him, with more likely it being a release at that point. So the point being is he's going to make 4.5 or basically 4.5 million against the cap this year, 9 million against the cap next year, and then in that third year when he's not on the team, he would make 6.5 million in dead cap money basically. So it equates to a 2-year, $20 million deal that is very team-friendly for this season when they need that money the most. Again, under $4.5 million for this season alone, which very team-friendly. And if you look at it, 2 years, $20 million for a running back the caliber of Aaron Jones, when you're still getting him in the prime of his career, certainly not bad at all. And, Jones gets no guarantees basically after that $20 million in those 2 seasons. He'll still be in his 20s, so a chance to get paid, but it's rare to see running backs get paid any sort of high amount in their late 20s. This was Jones' real opportunity to get a big payday, and he certainly took less money, in my opinion, to stick with Green Bay. So love to see that, as a fan of the team. You obviously want to see Jones get paid as well, but he wanted to be in Green Bay, and as a fan, you got to love him for that. All right, some other roster moves really quick. Za'Darius Smith gets a full restructure, and they went full scorched earth on this contract. They took his full $5 million roster bonus and $9.76 million in base salary and took that $14.76 million total, cut it in half, put $7.38 million into this year's cap, $7.38 million into next year's cap, and really made it so that he's only making $14.62 million this year, but will skyrocket to $28.13 million next year. So they save $7.4 million almost in salary cap this season, but it all goes towards next year. And what this equates to is it basically is a fork in the road where Green Bay will have to work on an extension for Za'Darius if they want to keep him next year, or they're going to take a major dead cap hit as he's not on the team next year. Look for an extension at some point, but they had to get this restructure in kind of before the deadline so that they could get under the cap and, potentially make some free agent moves, including re-signing Aaron Jones as well. We also saw Billy Turner get a restructure, and he was ultimately able to save the Packers $3.56 million with the restructure. He did have to approve this deal because Green Bay used void years at the end of this deal to clear more cap, which is something they have not done in the past. So this is Green Bay going into uncharted waters a little bit to find more creative ways to save money. Again, this all goes into the future, but it saves $3.56 million on this year's cap and certainly helps Green Bay this upcoming season. What did we not see? We did not see anything for Davante Adams, which I believe will be coming. I don't know for sure. I don't have any inside info, but they need to make more moves, right? They need to fill a draft class, have extra space throughout the season, be able to have 53 players go on a practice squad, probably sign a free agent or two. So they're going to have to do some more things. And Davante Adams is probably the next thing, maybe a Dean Lowry release. But the big thing, still nothing on Aaron Rodgers. And again, I would bet anything, something will happen with Rodgers, even if it's taking a small roster bonus, turning it into signing bonus and saving a few million. I think they'll at least take that low-hanging fruit, but really interesting still to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers and what type of message they send by either doing something or doing nothing, and just how much space do they ultimately clear if and when they want to sign a free agent, if they in fact do go that route. So how did Green Bay ultimately get under the cap? Remember, they reworked Preston Smith's deal, reworked Za'Darius Smith's deal, released Rick Wagner, released Christian Kirksey, reworked Billy Turner, reworked Adrian Amos, and then kind of messed with Devin Funchess's deal as well. So a lot of work just to get Green Bay slightly below that salary cap Mendoza line. Now, if they want to sign more people and get to where they need to for this upcoming season, Rodgers, Davante Adams, Dean Lowry, those are likely the next three that they work out in some way, shape, or form. We'll see how it works. And again, Aaron Rodgers, the really big one to keep an eye on there. Couple last notes. Minnesota signs Patrick Peterson. So a former big-time corner gets added to the division. Doesn't move the needle too much for me for Minnesota. Definitely towards the twilight of his career. If he can rejuvenate his career, then it definitely becomes more interesting. But Peterson has taken a step back. I don't know that this is all that much different than Xavier Rhodes a couple years back. Good player, not as good anymore. Davante Adams is not going to have any issue with him, but it definitely makes Minnesota a better team, so noteworthy in some capacity. And then last but not least, some rumors going around that the Bears may release Kyle Fuller. And one, it's big news because seeing Kyle Fuller as not a Bear would be nice news. But two, remember Green Bay signed Kyle Fuller to a massive offer sheet that he signed just a few years back. And Green Bay was very interested in him then. Green Bay has a very big hole next to Jair Alexander at that corner position. I've said all along, I believe Green Bay is going to make one pretty solid swing at somebody this offseason. I personally believe that will be a cornerback, whether it's a Richard Sherman, a Kyle Fuller, a Troy Hill, a Dory Jackson, or maybe somebody a step lower. I don't know, but I think they're going to try to fill somebody there. You got to think that Brian Gutekunst would at least make a call to Kyle Fuller to see just how far off they are and to see if they could make something work, because he was such a huge fan of Fuller just a few years ago. And in my opinion, I think Fuller's actually gotten better since that point and just kind of progressed throughout his career. So Going to be really interesting to see if, in fact, they release Kyle Fuller and if Green Bay makes a call for his services if he does get released. That is going to do it for me. We will see on Thursday if they make any additional moves, if they sign a free agent, if they do something with Devontae Adams or Aaron Rodgers. All of this is going to be tremendously interesting. So make sure to stick here every single day, 365 days a year, and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to check out our audio version today. If you haven't yet, it's an awesome new episode, 365 days a year. We've got a ton of people, like 25 different people. We're just going to be starting to get into draft content soon as free agency gets done. Got some exciting announcements there coming up. So make sure to check out the audio version. But that's going to do it for me today. Until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.